Check the old dashboard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Testing, testing. Oh, let me shut my door real quick. Testing, testing. Oh, let me shut my door real quick.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Testing, testing. There we go. Door shut. Oh, let me shut my door real quick. Testing. Coming through.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, I heard you. I just didn't hear myself, so I wanted to give it a little more time. Alright. So we are here with Jedi Wes, who has completed an epic travel. What was it, Scarif that you had traveled to for the weekend?
Not quite. Not quite.
Tell us
No,
where you went and what is important this way and why it's significant to Star Wars fans everywhere.
I went down to Plano, Texas, for GamerNation Con, which is hosted by the guys that run the Order 66 podcast, GM Dave and GM Phil, if you're familiar with them. And I think this is the fourth con. So 4 years ago, they did a Kickstarter, kind of almost on a dare, it seemed, that they would do a convention if they got enough. I think it was a stretch goal for one of their Kickstarters that they would do a convention if they got a certain amount of money, and they got that money in spades, and they did the convention, and then they started just doing a Kickstarter for the convention the next 3 years, which I've been to all but the first one. I could not make the first one, but I've been through at 2 through 4, and hopefully going back to 5.
So, first of all, let's start with guest of honor for Star Wars FFG fans. Recognize the name of Katrina Ostrander. How's Katrina doing, and did you get to hang out with her?
Yeah, got to hang out a little bit. Played in a session of Legend of the Five Rings that she ran, which was a ton of fun. I had never played that system. Not very familiar with the Rokugan setting, but she had, as part of the thing with Legend of the Five Rings, part of the big thing with gameplay is actually creating your samurai. So going through, she had all the steps laid out on a piece of paper, and so it was easy. You could just make she gave you some background on the different clans, and you can pick things out as you went. And character creation, I think, took maybe 20 minutes to get all 6 people up to speed, and then went from there.
So, what did you learn from her as a GM?
Well, her GM style is the complete opposite of mine. Where she likes to plan, and it seemed to me anyway, where she likes to plan and have a lot of detail in what she's doing for the session. I tend to make an entire campaign for me will be one 8.5 by 11 or A5 sheet of paper front and back with an outline, and that's it. That's my entire campaign.
So, was she going with a binder, or did it just seem that she had hyper prepped, or?
She had a laptop. She had a ton of prep, like for me, the different branches of stuff. She seemed like when people started giving things, she would refer to it and to refresh her memory about what she had planned for something in that vein. I kind of do the same thing in that respect. I don't go into as much detail as she does. Mainly because I'm running Star Wars, and most of the time, and Star Wars is in the collective pop culture consciousness that everybody has, whereas feudal Japan and China is not. Even if you're a hardcore anime fan, feudal Japan or feudal China are not in the collective subconscious, even of a lot of anime fans, because it's just a very niche thing. But it was a ton of fun.
What else can you tell us about her style as a GM?
she one thing I do like, and I think I need to do more of, is she took time during a one shot to make sure that she went around the table and made sure everyone was involved. Sometimes that can be difficult, especially if you're running a large game. So if you've got a small group, it's easy to get everybody involved. But if you've got more than 6 people, it's difficult.
And how many people did you have at the table?
We had 6, including her. So me and 5 others were playing. Um, I tend to run. I tend, because I run shop games, I tend to run larger groups. But
Mm-hmm.
let's see, other sessions I ran, I got to play Staggering Dragon was there, which what they are is they are um, they do a gaming table with a large screen TV mounted, recessed in it. So all their maps were on a flat panel LCD underneath a sheet of glass.
Hmm.
So they could change things up on the fly. And they also it was a Star Wars session, and it was entirely multimedia. So soundtracks playing, and Star Wars soundtrack is playing in the background. There was an opening crawl for the session that they played, and then like there were little news snippets that played at various points during the session, and we'd kind of stop the game, and everybody would move to one side of the table, and we'd watch the news snippet, and then game would resume. So it was all part of the big thing, and that was a lot of fun.
Very
Those guys
cool.
do a top-notch job.
And they do that professionally for cons, or is that just another
Uh,
podcast group? I'm not familiar
they
with them.
do. I think they. I don't know if they do a live play podcast or not. I know they do. They'll do just about. They do cons, but they'll also do other events. Like if you just pay a fee, and they bring the table. The table breaks down into sections, and they can transport it. So
Okay. Very cool. And did you get to run anything?
yeah, I ran I ran a one shot that a buddy of mine had actually written. We got it together and for the con, and I ran it Imperial Commando. So instead of playing what you would normally think of your Rebel Trooper squad or even your Jedi's, no, it's like no, all of you're all stormtroopers. You're elite stormtroopers, but you're stormtroopers, and you're being sent to a space station to find a missing scientist.
So, what changes do you have to make to the rules in order to play the evil campaign here?
Uh, Not really any, because there were no force none of the characters, none of the pre-gens I took were force sensitive, so there were no changes. We used the duty mechanic for it. Motivate Motivations you have to change, because most of the motivations in the core book are overthrow the Empire, and it's like yeah, that's not going to work for a stormtrooper squad.
Yeah.
So
So, what were the highlights of the game?
uh the game I ran,
Yeah.
probably the 6 players completely through the clever use of triumphs completely derailing where I intended to take the game.
How?
So that
Where did they take it, and where was the track?
they actually managed it. So I don't want to spoil it, because we're thinking about um, working it up and actually using it as a published adventure
Okay.
later. Um, so I'll kind of leave it at that. But yeah, um, through the clever use of some triumphs, they they completely derailed where the module normally goes.
So, I assume that you had a group of very experienced Star Wars FFG players at your table.
I had GM Phil played the heavy, Darren West played our medic, and GM Chance played the squad leader, and then we had Damon and Kate Cunningham. I've played with them several times. They're friends of Darren West. They played in it. One of them played the Vanguard and our Vanguard point man, and the other one played What was the other one? Had a Slicer Recruit. That was one of GM Chance's, Chris Bradshaw's friends. And then, what was the other one? Oh, it was just the standard. I had just a standard commando,
Okay.
and that's what
And
Damon played. So
so,
yeah.
with a group that experienced of Star Wars Fantasy Flight, what was the biggest challenge for you as a GM?
Uh, I've played in games that GM Phil has run. I haven't got a chance to play in a game that any of the other people have run. But I've played in games that GM Phil has run, and Phil sets a high bar. So there was a tiny bit of intimidation there.
So, how did you approach
So
it?
uh, I tend to be a yes and GM anyway. So as long as what they're suggesting for spending advantage and triumphs is within the realm of does it fit Star Wars, then I'm like, yeah, sure, or fit the theme of the game. I usually don't have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And I hear that Black Nova Gambit made a return.
Yeah, GM Chris has reworked it for the Star Wars FFG system. Uh, 3 tables, 3 GMs, 18 players, and you're on a time limit.
Who were the other GMs?
GM Chris ran the table of soldiers. GM Phil ran the table that had all of the Jedi Knights, because he's the most familiar with the Force rules. And GM Dave ran the table for the space combat, the space fighter squadron. Set in the Old Republic. Ton of fun.
Did they use miniatures and things and stuff? I
Mm-hmm.
know they had the nice space worm and things.
Yeah, they did. They did. Excuse me. They did miniatures for every table. Like I said, ton of fun. And each table had 3 encounters, and each encounter was on a 1-hour time limit. If you did not complete you were given an objective at the very beginning of the thing. If you had not completed that objective by the end of the hour, you failed. Which doesn't mean you could still go on to the next encounter. It's just your next encounter was obviously a lot harder.
You've played it before, obviously, the Black Nova Gambit with Saga.
I had read through I'd read through it when GM Chris first released it for Saga, so I had read through it at that point and was really impressed with it. But since I haven't looked at it in almost 7 years, it was almost like coming in with a clean slate. So I did not know all of the little plot points. What was really cool was at the very end of it, when everything was said and done, everybody was like, okay, let's run it. Let's run this again. But everybody changed tables, so the people at this table, let's just move one table. We'll run it again, and then we can switch tables again. That way, everybody gets to play every single part.
Oh, cool.
and Dave, Phil, and Chris were kind of like, we're about to now. We've got other things we have to run, and that was exhausting.
It is exhausting doing an epic.
Yeah, doing something that large, timed especially, because you've got to be on your toes. Keep things
So how do
moving.
they? Usually with Fantasy Flight Star Wars, things move very quickly for me.
Oh yeah.
Versus with how the saga with with the very counting the squares of D&D like for Saga. How did they account for that to make it fill the time and make it not feel like they had padded it? From what you saw.
Well, they did have, like I said, they did have maps and miniatures, and the one thing that they did was they kind of set out beforehand. Okay, this, this many, and it did have squares on it, and it'd be like roughly this many squares is short range, this many is medium, this is long. So we had an idea in our heads about how, roughly how far we could move. We were doing things like that. I've noticed, especially the biggest thing that a lot of times will slow a session down is destiny point management.
Mm-hmm.
People will be like, "Well, do you think we ought to flip a destiny point?" And our table, anyway, GM Hudson, Chris Hudson, said before we even started, said, "Okay, before we start, here's the thing: we're all experienced players. We know what we're doing. Don't, we're on a time limit. Don't ask for permission to spend a destiny point. Chris is gonna, Chris is gonna flip them back to dark side on us. If you think you need it, spend it. Don't get into analysis paralysis and say, well, should I do it? Just no, just do it. So we kind of made that deal at the beginning and held to it.
Hmm.
So
Did they add more social encounters to it, or was it
oh
all
no,
combat?
this straight combat. That's all it is. There are no social encounters whatsoever. I mean, unless you wanted to make an intimidation check or something, but uh, most of the time it was just it was just a straight combat slogfest. So,
What character
which
did
can
you
be,
play?
I played a Vanguard who was armed with a Carillion compound bow, and I had a variety of. I had standard broadhead arrows, but I also had some explode. So I basically was playing Hawkeye from the Avengers, and that's literally how when I looked over, I was like, "This is Hawkeye." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's exactly how I'm playing it." So I played it like Clint Barton and just went through it like that. If I couldn't defeat the if I couldn't hurt the bad guy, then I would try to do damage to other things and do some battlefield control.
And how did that work out, that strategy?
It worked out really well in the long run. There were some side quests in each encounter that we could do. Like the first one, we had to damage certain equipment in the room, and so I had made an attack against a Sith apprentice in one round and failed, and then he basically charged up and tried to fillet me with the lightsaber, which luckily he missed. Uh, and then the next round, I immediately retreated back from him, got an explosive arrow, but instead of shooting him, I shot the control console next to kind of off to the side, which I was like, yeah, that's exactly something Hawkeye would do. Is okay, I'm obviously not going to hurt you or mess you up, but I'm gonna antagonize you and try to get you to make a mistake that someone else can exploit. So, which it worked out really well because while he's concentrating on me, the giant Wookiee with the vibro axe was able to flank in from the side and then cut him to pieces.
Cool.
And then the droid got brought him down pretty bad, and then the droid no well no the droid didn't take out the Sith. The droid took out the Sith officer because it's set in the Old Republic. So he the droid that we had uh, commandeered an e-web that some guys had basically set up. He went in and killed them and just took the e-web over and then just started gunning things down left and right uh, with the e-web and blowing the crap out of everything in the room, which was great.
Cool. What other highlights were there from GamerNation Con?
um, got to pick got to play in a couple of pickup games. One of them was with um, this year Jaeger Greta, which is one of the people from Norway. Uh, Brought three of his regular gaming group, and they'd never been to GamerNation Con. And one of them ran a pickup game of Coriolis.
Hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
It's a Swedish sci-fi setting, and so he ran a pickup game of that one morning. Or no, was it a registered? I think no, it was a pickup game because yeah. And so I jumped in on that, and that was a ton of fun. And then Jaeger Greta himself actually ran Mutant Year Zero uh,
Hmm.
at on Saturday night, Gamer Nation After Dark. So I got to play an anthropomorphic fox mechanic. Because he ran the regular Mutant Year Zero, but he also ran the expansion that they put in the Gen Lab Alpha, which is basically Island of Dr. Moreau creatures
Oh, that sounds
running
like
around
fun.
as well. Oh, it was a ton of fun.
What other
Um,
creatures were there in the game?
in the Gen Lab Alpha game, though, we had so I was playing like a fox mechanic, and then we had uh, a moose hunter, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. So just imagine this, giant moose with a rifle and an axe. And
Cool.
then one of the guys played a regular mutant, which was a human that had like dragonfly wings. Um, what was the other one? What was the other one? Oh, a cat warrior. So
Okay.
imagine an anthropomorphic lynx with a hockey mask and a giant hammer, just just a cinder block stuck on the end of a metal pole. So
Not using its claws?
no,
Just a hammer.
just a hammer, just a gigantic hammer. It was great. It was a lot of fun. I'm definitely gonna have to see if my shop can get. I know they've got the Gen Lab Alpha. I'm gonna have to see if they can get some like the Coriolis and some of the others. Those are a ton of fun.
Awesome. And so, how was it with the guys? How's everybody doing?
Everybody everybody's great. None of the Canadians could make it this year because I think some of them started new jobs and didn't have the time to take off. So uh, they didn't make it down, but most everybody else that was there last year made it this year. I think there was a few other people that weren't able to come because of
Yeah.
family commitments and stuff. But overall, everybody's doing well. Ton of fun was had. I think we also raised like nearly $1,000 for charity
Wow.
for the Spiel Foundation. So
Cool. And what did you learn about Star Wars that you didn't know this time?
uh, as far as like game mechanics
Anything.
or running the game or
The game,
um,
anything, or even lore?
not really anything lore wise because right now they're still resetting everything. So who knows what will happen? There were a few late night conversations about what's going on with Rebels and where we think the series is going. Um, but I know not everybody has cable, so that can be difficult and don't want to spoil anything for
Yeah.
those that are following, or those who are having to watch it late. Honestly, can't think of really anything. Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of different things were reinforced. A lot of the people have the same play style that I do. It's a lot of yes and or um, like the multimedia. I don't know if that I will ever do a multimedia
Oh, you've seen the fun.
experience.
You've done. Haven't you done? Weren't you
Oh no
in one
no
of the
what
games that I did
what
that?
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that I would have the time to actually put into it. That's the thing.
Okay.
And plus it's one of those things. If I went to all the trouble to make a bunch of news feeds and little news snippets and things like that, and then the players go off into left field, I would just feel like, well, I've wasted how many hours putting
Mm-hmm.
that together, and now it's useless. So maybe once I get a more regular home game thing going where I'm hosting it at my house instead of going to other people's house to run it. Maybe at that point I'll do some more.
I was surprised they were doing it at a con because it's usually hard to hear the thing. I tried to use the multimedia at Gen Con and it was just really hard for people to hear it.
Yeah, depending on where you're running, the room they had, the main room at GamerNation Con tends to be kind of quiet, and so they had that in the one of the main rooms where they do the registration and everything. Off to the side, that's where the multimedia table was set up, and so the noise level was down.
Mm,
Had it been in the other room where a lot of the board games and stuff go on, probably would not have been able to hear it
right.
because it was just so loud.
Speaking of Rebels, I'm getting ready right now for our local convention at the end of the month, and I'm going to be running Star Wars for the first time in about a year.
Cool.
I'm running Fantasy Flight, my own adventure for Star Wars Rebels. Give
Nice.
me a primer. What have after taking a year off do I need to look back at as far as rules wise, or what do I need to remember to run a
What
good Star Wars game for a GM who's been off for a year?
what system
I'm
are
running
you
Fantasy
gonna
Flight Age of Rebellion.
Age of Rebellion? Okay. Any Force users?
Kanan, yeah.
Okay. Read over the main. I would say if you're running Force users, read over the main uh, the force powers that you gave the character. Read over the not the talent tree write-ups, but the main block write-ups below. Read over those very carefully. Know them almost backwards and forwards. That way, if there's any question about how it works, um, you'll avoid you can avoid mix ups, misunderstandings, or just the player trying to break the game. Uh, The other thing is, probably, is there any starship combat?
Yes, there is.
Okay, go over starship combat and because there's starship combat is almost exactly like personal scale combat, but there's a few nuances to it. Because not only does size difference between the vehicles factor into it. Sometimes your speed your starship speed will factor into things on what maneuvers you can or cannot do.
Hmm.
Because there's some of them, like there's some maneuvers where you have to be going a certain speed in order uh, to pull them off. And if you're not paying attention, it's like, well, I'm going to do this maneuver, okay, and then you realize, wait a minute, now he's going speed 2. He couldn't. There's no way he could go into evasive maneuvers. He's not going. He's got to be
Not going
going 4
fast enough.
plus in order to do evasive. So just those little things are the biggest thing to refresh. Because personal scale combat, I pretty much remember personal scale all the time. But
Hmm.
if I'm running a one shot or something like that that's got a lot of space combat or has a lot of force users in it, I have to refresh myself
I'm
on
taking.
those
I
every
mean,
once in a while.
hey, I'm taking your advice. I'm using your Inquisitor that you provided on D20 Radio. I'm even
That
having him
that
do a dramatic entrance after the
oh,
heroes escape him the first time. The second time, he flies into the space station in a TIE interceptor and flies to the room next to where they are, lands, and gets out to attack them.
nice. Oh, the Inquisitor I did was a she
Oh
because I
yeah,
based it
she.
off of yeah because that Inquisitor made several people um, nearly nearly choke uh, at my table.
And based on how many despairs are rolled, Darth Vader may show up.
Yeah, I got Rebels the other day. I've got to sit down and do an edit and just edit that last scene. Have you seen Rebels or not
I
Rebels, but Rogue One?
I just got from Rogue One my Rogue One in the mail yesterday. I got the special edition from Target.
Okay, have you watched it?
I have not had time to watch it. I
Oh,
had D&D last night.
there's this one little end scene that most people have probably seen posted online of Darth Vader in the hallway, and that's all I'm gonna say.
I know the scene. I've seen the movie
I've,
twice.
okay, you've seen it. Okay, so that scene, I've got to take the movie and edit that down and just keep it on my iPad. That way, if I ever run a session, it's like, I'm going to attack Darth Vader. Just 1 second. And just hold it up. This is what happens.
Would you like to build a new character?
Yes. This. Here you go. That's what you get to watch.
Ooh, that looks like it hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. That's. Yeah. I need to sit down and watch that. I've got to finish prepping. I got a Star Wars game. I got a Savage Risk game Saturday morning and a Star Wars game Saturday night. So.
Got a full weekend of fun after a whole another weekend of fun.
I always have a full weekend of fun. it seems, because I'm always usually either running or playing something on the weekend. So
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, Jedi Wes, and may the Force be with you.
may the force be with you, Garrett.